leads us to our last topic before the preview, which is the guy who's kind of, getting his place because of the profile of the signing. But also, we have to be honest and say that we haven't seen the Florian Wirtz that people are really looking forward to seeing for several different reasons. At least we hadn't, I think, until a very interesting cameo in that Arsenal game where I thought he really had started to tick before he had to go off with cramp. I thought he was imposing himself on the game. And we started to see little Florian Wirtz bits, like forcing his way between a couple of players and pushing the ball around the corner and getting the ball back and making those little movements that we've come to associate with him when he's absolutely on it. Do you see enough there to encourage you that maybe he is starting to find his Premier League legs?
Yes and no. I thought it was definitely his best game for Liverpool, but then he had a worrying outing for Germany again in their first game where he didn't play particularly well. And the problem is, Trevor, is that he's such an elegant footballer when he's at his best. I mean, my expectation is him floating across Anfield, playing long range passes, and the other passes, like where he pushes the ball in behind and does his little bit. We haven't quite seen that, so I still think there's work to be done. But I think he would be encouraged by the second half against Arsenal, because sometimes you just need little bits and bobs that go your way where you can kind of go, this will be okay. There's nothing worse than where you always feel like you're climbing that mountain. So I think he'd have gone home after the Arsenal game and thought, there's things in the game today that will give me encouragement. And to be fair, we said at the start of the show, when do we settle down? And when we all settle down and everything is rolling, then the way he plays will improve. I have no doubt about that.
I thought you mentioned earlier on Madueke versus Kirkes, and I thought Kirkes had his most dialed-in performance. And yeah, Madueke looked good, but mostly it ended with Kirkes putting the ball out for a corner and actually ultimately winning that confrontation. So I was really heartened by that. But it's very interesting to see how the team is set up, because we got to see some more of Virgil to Mo stuff going on that we're more familiar with. And I think as the game went on as well, there did seem to be a slightly better rhythm to it, because it seems, and we touched on this last day, it seems that like we're trying to force Wirtz to be the fulcrum. And I have no doubt that you've experienced this yourself as someone who teams were looking to play through. But it really does depend, doesn't it, on who is doing the feeding and what there is then to feed to. You can take up all these positions, but if there's someone sort of in the same space as you, and it feels an awful lot of the time like there's someone really close to Florian Wirtz, and it seems like I don't know, the system doesn't seem to be there yet, I guess is what I'm saying in my kind of amateurish way.
No, absolutely spot on, Trevor. And I think that's what a lot of people said. And, this is what we said before. I can't wait to see when we have the way that we want to play and how we get the best out of Florian Wirtz. But it is a fact that we want to go through him, but he has to find some space and he has to be able to find some time to do what he does. And that might just take a little bit longer than what we thought, because when somebody costs that type of money, and it's not fair for him in it, but that's what we expected. This boy's going to settle in from day one. It hasn't quite been like that. His ability is still there. I think we'll be absolutely fine.
Well, I look forward to seeing what that looks like. To be honest with you, I really do. And as you said, it's this theme of the show. When will we settle? That's the question everyone wants to know. We will do our usual and look ahead for the last couple of minutes here to the Burnley game at the weekend. And just for the sake of letting people know how they've gotten on so far, I think it's 3 points they have in their season to date. They beat Sunderland 2-0 on the opening day, was it? No, sorry. They got beat 3-0 by Tottenham on the opening day. Then they had a 2-0 win over Sunderland and a reversal against United in a 3-2 defeat at Old Trafford. And in that most recent game, the lineup for them was Foster up top with a line behind them of Anthony, who you've mentioned, Mebry and Larson. And then Ugochukwu and Cullen in the more defensive midfield roles. Esteve and Ekdal were at centre-half with Walker and Hartman either side and Dubravka in nets. They have on their bench Joe Worrell. They've got a kid called Loom Chauna. They've got Oliver Sonne, who people will know, Josh Laurent. They've got Marcus Edwards, Max Weiss, Zion Fleming, Aaron Ramsey, and Lucas Perez. Safe to say, man, of the teams that we faced so far this season, it isn't the most sort of intimidating sounding squad. You see where I'm going with that. I'm not coming at this from a we're better than them perspective. It's just a lot of names that people won't be as familiar with, maybe not as Premier League proven or whatever. What do you make of Scott Parker and his setup there? Do you see, from the little bits you'll have seen, do you see a setup that's got the wherewithal to stay around, or are they going to fall into that thing that so many modern promoted teams do, that they're almost immediately favourites for the turnaround?
Well, they are. They are favourites to get relegated. I was at their first game at Spurs when they lost 3-0, and they played with a three-man defence. Since then, he's gone back to a back four. Last season, they broke all sorts of defensive records in the Championship. So they come up with a strong defence, and in the first game at this level, they found out that we ain't going to survive on that strong defence from last year, because Spurs scored 3 times against them and probably could have scored 4 or 5. Burnley never looked like scoring at Spurs. Unbelievably, then beat Sunderland 2-0, which I thought was a great result. And then people say they would have been unlucky at Old Trafford, conceding a penalty in the 96th minute. But if you look at the stats, United had 26 efforts. That's a lot of efforts in a goal in a game, isn't it? So United dominated that game. I'm a big fan when you get promoted, Trevor. Get yourself some Premier League experience. I don't think they have. People say, what about Kyle Walker? Yeah, Kyle Walker. But apart from that, they paid over 50 million for 3 Chelsea reserves. I just don't see it, Trevor. I'm amazed that they've scored 4 goals already in 3 games. I thought goals would be really hard to come by for them, but I just don't see the quality. It's going to be a long season, but there's going to be 2 Burnleys. I think there's going to be the Burnley at home, and there's going to be the Burnley away. So this will be a tricky game for us. They'll get men behind the ball. They'll be well organised. You asked about Scott Parker. Scott Parker is an unbelievable manager in the Championship. 3 promotions from the Championship with Bournemouth, Fulham and Burnley, but 55 Premier League games as a manager, 10 wins. Kind of tells your own story, doesn't it, Trevor?
It is quite a revealing stat, to be fair. And it's not to say that you can't turn that around, but it is true to say, isn't it, Jan, that just like as a player, sometimes you can find your level where you're effective. We can see it somehow with a certain next level up of manager, someone like a Rodgers who can go off and be successful in the Scottish Premier League, but the Premier League things just sort of evades him or eludes him. Maybe Scott Parker's in that next bracket down where, as you say, really good in the Championship, but maybe something about the Premier League that's too tough. I'll finish, as I always do, by asking you how you think it's going to go in that particular game.
So luckily, Trevor, we have levels in football, don't we? So everybody have their level, and not everybody can play at the highest level and whatever. It is what it is, and Scott Parker might just be a great Championship manager. This game, in between the international break, focus on the Champions League on Wednesday against Atletico Madrid. Let's not forget last year, I think it was before our first Champions League game, we lost 1-0 at home against Nottingham Forest. So there will be focus on getting off to a good start in the Champions League. I don't know whether that'll affect the starting 11 for the game. Having said all of that, and I've just said that I think Burnley are going to find it hard to score goals this year. I do, however, think they'll get one. So I think it's going to be Burnley 1, Liverpool 3.
Yeah, well, I would love that. We should finish this show before I disappear off the screen, because whatever darkness has descended on my room, I'm like the ghost of Trev away from you. So we should wrap it up. Thanks as ever to Jan for yet another fantastic show, walking through all the questions and answering them all so well for us. We appreciate him immensely. For myself, from Jan. Until next week, good luck. Right, buddy, that is